All right, let's get ready to kick things up a notch. We're diving deep into biomechanics today, specifically for martial arts. We'll be exploring a textbook, Biomechanics of Human Motion Applications in the Martial Arts.
It's a pretty fascinating read, really gets into the science behind those powerful moves.
And we've got an author who knows his stuff. Dr. Assir is both a biomechanics expert and a martial arts master.
Yeah, talk about a unique perspective. He's bridging the gap between theory and practice.
Exactly. He's not just talking about it, he's living it, which is super valuable for our deep dive. So let's break it down. What exactly is biomechanics, and why should any martial artist out there care?
Well, you could say that it's like having a secret weapon. It's all about understanding why things work the way they do. It's about knowing how to maximize your body's potential for, well, really for any technique.
Okay, a secret weapon. I like the sound of that. So it's
Yeah.
more than just brute strength.
Oh, absolutely. It's about efficiency and precision, moving smarter, not just harder. Biomechanics can help you refine your technique, generate more power, move with more agility.
And maybe even prevent injuries.
Yeah,
right?
you got it. That too.
So knowing the science behind the moves can really take training to a whole new level.
It absolutely can. And it's interesting to see that people have been studying this stuff for centuries. Dr. Urs mentions Galen, a physician in ancient Rome who actually worked with gladiators.
Wait, ancient Rome, what were they studying back then?
Well, Galen was one of the first to understand the difference between motor and sensory nerves.
Wow, so they were already connecting the body and movement way back then?
Yep, they were. And Dr. Urs also mentions Leonardo da Vinci, who was fascinated by balance and center of gravity.
Makes sense. Balance is key in martial arts. Nobody wants to get knocked over easily.
Exactly. So even these brilliant minds recognize the importance of biomechanics, even if they didn't call it that back then.
Right. They were just figuring things out as they went. Okay, so let's get into the nuts and bolts here. What are the fundamental types of motion we need to understand?
We've got three main ones: rectilinear, angular, and curvilinear motion.
All right, break those down for me.
Sure. Rectilinear is all about straight lines. Like, imagine a boxer's jab. Straight and direct.
Okay, makes sense. What about angular?
Angular motion involves rotation around a fixed point. Like, picture a circular block in karate.
Ah, so it's like spinning on an axis.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then curvilinear motion, that's a combination of the two.
So most martial arts techniques are actually curvilinear, right?
Yeah.
A blend of straight lines and rotations.
You got it. Which makes them more complex, sure, but also way more dynamic.
And probably more effective too, right?
Absolutely. That's the beauty of it.
Okay, so we've got these different types of motion. But what about our bodies themselves? How do our bones and joints play into all of this?
Well, your bones are the framework, the structure that everything else is built upon.
Right, the foundation.
And joints.
Think of them as the hinges. They're what allow your bones to move in different ways.
So they're what make movement possible in the first place. Exactly. And there are different types of joints, each with its own range of motion. Like your elbow, that's a hinge joint, mainly for bending and straightening. But then you've got your shoulder, that's a ball and socket joint, much wider range of motion.
So knowing how those different joints work can help me move my body correctly and avoid injuries.
Absolutely. It's all connected.
This is fascinating stuff. Okay, we've covered the framework and the hinges. What about muscles?
Well, the muscles are the engines, the powerhouses that actually make those movements happen.
Right, they generate the force for all those techniques. But how do they actually work? I mean, it seems almost magical that just thinking about moving makes it happen.
It is pretty incredible, yeah. It all comes down to muscle origin and insertion, where the muscle attaches to the bone.
Okay, so like with my bicep, the origin would be up near my shoulder and the insertion down by my elbow.
Exactly. When that bicep contracts, it pulls on the bone at the insertion point, bending your arm.
Ah, so it's like a lever system.
You got it. And we'll dive deeper into levers later on because they're key for understanding power generation.
That's where it gets really interesting. Levers are like force multipliers.
No, they are. And understanding how they work within your body, that can make a huge difference in your technique.
Okay, I see the connection here. Bones are the structure, joints are the hinges, and muscles are the engines. But there's got to be more to it than that, right?
There is. We need to talk about how those muscles work together, the different types of contractions, and how all of this is controlled by the nervous system.
Okay, now we're getting into the really complex stuff. But I'm ready. Let's dive in.
Welcome back. Let's pick up where we left off. We were talking about muscles and how they work together.
Right. It can't just be a free-for-all in there. How do they create those smooth, coordinated movements?
It's definitely not a free-for-all. Muscles work in pairs, often as what we call agonists and antagonists.
Agonists and antagonists.
Yeah. So the agonist is the prime mover, the muscle doing the main work for a specific action. The antagonist does the opposite. It relaxes, lengthens to allow that movement to happen smoothly.
Okay, opposite roles but working together. Can you give me an example?
Sure. Think about a bicep curl, right? When you bend your arm, your bicep, that's the agonist, contracting to lift the weight. At the same time, your tricep, on the back of your arm, that's the antagonist, relaxing to let the bicep do its thing.
Ah, okay, that makes sense. It's like a yin-yang thing going on. But it can't just be about contracting and relaxing, right? I mean, there are different ways muscles exert force.
You're right. There are different types of muscle contractions: isometric, concentric, and eccentric.
Okay, break those down for me.
In an isometric contraction, the muscle tenses up, but it doesn't actually change length.
So no movement. When would that happen?
Think about holding a plank position or pushing against a wall. Your muscles are working, but they're not shortening or lengthening.
Oh, I see. Okay, so what about concentric contractions?
Concentric contractions are the ones we usually think of with muscle building. The muscle shortens as it contracts, generating force.
Like when I'm lifting weights.
Exactly, like a bicep curl. As you lift the weight, your bicep muscle, it shortens.
Okay, got it. So then what's an eccentric contraction?
Eccentric contractions are kind of the opposite of concentric. The muscle lengthens while it's still under tension.
Wait, so it's getting longer while working?
Yep. Imagine lowering that weight back down during the bicep curl. Your bicep's still working to control that movement, but it's lengthening as it does.
So even when I'm lowering a weight, the muscle is still putting in work. Interesting. Do these types of contractions apply to martial arts? I can't quite picture it.
Absolutely. All three types are crucial for martial arts. Think about punch. The initial extension of your arm, that's concentric. But then as you retract your arm, that's an eccentric contraction of your tricep to control the movement and bring your fists back.
Wow, so these contractions are happening all the time without us even realizing it. And knowing about them can help us train smarter, right?
For sure. Understanding how to engage the right muscles in the right way, that can lead to more power, better control, and even prevent injuries.
This is all super helpful. But I am curious, how does our brain tell all these muscles what to do and when? There must be a lot of coordination involved.
That's where your nervous system comes in. It's like the command center, sending signals from your brain to your muscles, telling them when and how to contract.
So it's like a super fast communication network.
Exactly. Starts with an electrical impulse in the brain called an action potential. That signal travels down your spinal cord, along the nerves, to reach the specific muscle fibers you want to activate.
Wow, and all that happens in a split second.
Yep, incredibly fast. That's why you can react quickly to a surprise attack or execute a complex combo.
So it's not just about muscle strength, it's about having a responsive nervous system too.
Absolutely. The nervous system, that's what allows you to translate thought into action. And the faster, the more efficient those signals are, the better your performance is going to be.
Mind-blowing. So, strong muscles, A&D, a quick nervous system. Anything else our bodies do to optimize for movement?
Well, we got to talk about muscle fibers. You've probably heard of slow twitch and fast twitch.
Vaguely, yeah. What's the difference, and why does it matter for martial arts?
Slow twitch fibers, those are all about endurance. They're fatigue resistant, but they generate less force. You use them for things like long distance running or holding a horse stance for, a long time.
For like the marathon runners of the muscle world.
Exactly. And then we have fast twitch fibers. Those are all about power and speed. They fire quickly, generate a lot of force, but they fatigue more easily. You use these for explosive movements like sprinting, jumping, throwing a powerful punch.
So fast twitch fibers are the sprinters. Don't we have both types in all of our muscles, though?
We do, but different muscles have different proportions of each type, depending on what they do. Like your calf muscles, those are used for walking and running, so they have more slow twitch fibers. But muscles used for quick, powerful movements, like your bicep, triceps, they have more fast twitch fibers.
Fascinating. So knowing about muscle fiber types, that can help me tailor my training.
Absolutely. If you want to improve endurance, you'll focus on exercises that target those slow twitch fibers. And if you're looking for explosive power, you'll work those fast twitch fibers.
I'm starting to see the bigger picture here. It's all about knowing how our bodies are built, right? And how to use that knowledge to our advantage in martial arts.
That's exactly it. Biomechanics isn't just about abstract concepts. It's about understanding the tools you have and learning how to use them to become a more skilled and more powerful martial artist.
Okay, this has been a lot of information, but it's been great. I feel like I'm already looking at my training differently. Can you do a quick recap before we move on, just a summary of what we covered here?
Of course. We talked about how muscles work together as agonists and antagonists, the different types of contractions, isometric, concentric, and eccentric. We talked about how the nervous system acts as the command center, sending those signals from the brain to the muscles. And finally, we touched on muscle fiber types and how they influence muscle function.
Perfect. I'm ready to dive into the next layer of biomechanics and see what other insights we can uncover. Okay, so we've talked muscles, bones, joints, even the nervous system. What's next in our biomechanics journey?
Well, now we're getting into kinematics and kinetics. This is where we really start to analyze movement, understand how to really optimize those techniques.
Okay, those sound pretty technical. Can you give me a refresher on what they're all about?
Sure. Think of kinematics as the what of movement. It describes how things move: speed, direction, acceleration, but it doesn't get into the forces involved. It's like mapping out the path of a technique.
So if I'm picturing a roundhouse kick, kinematics would be about describing the path of my leg as it travels towards the target.
Exactly. And then you have kinetics, which is the why of the movement. It dives into the forces that cause or change motion, things like gravity, friction, and the force generated by your muscles.
So kinetics is all about understanding the power behind the technique. What's actually driving that movement?
You got it. And both are essential for really breaking down martial arts techniques.
Okay, I'm starting to see how it all comes together. Can you give me an example of how we would apply these concepts to, say, that roundhouse kick we were just talking about?
Of course. Let's start with kinematics. We could analyze the speed of your kick, the angle at which your leg rises, the distance it travels, the point of impact. All of these factors influence how effective that kick will be.
So, like a faster kick with a steeper angle, that might have more power, but it might also leave me off balance, kind of a trade-off.
Exactly. And that's where kinetics comes in. We can analyze the force generated by your hip flexors, your glutes, how that force is transferred through your leg, and the impact force that's delivered to the target.
So even if two people have similar kicking speed and technique, the one who can generate more force is going to have a more powerful kick. It's about understanding where that power comes from.
Precisely. And that's where understanding levers comes in, which we touched on earlier. Our bones act like levers, our joints are the fulcrums, and our muscles provide the effort.
Right. So the way we use our bodies as a system of levers, that can really impact the force we generate.
Oh, absolutely. For example, think about a front kick, right? Your hip joint is the fulcrum, your leg is the lever, and the muscles in your thigh, those provide the effort to lift your leg. By adjusting the angle of your hip, the placement of your foot, you can actually change the length of that lever arm, and that affects the force you generate.
Wow, that's amazing. So it's not just about kicking hard, it's about understanding how to manipulate those levers to maximize my power output.
Exactly. And that's just one example. Biomechanics can be applied to any technique. It can help you refine your movements, become a more efficient, more powerful martial artist.
This is making a lot of sense. Anything else we should know about kinematics and kinetics? Any other key concepts?
One more thing that's really relevant to martial arts is impulse.
Okay, what's impulse?
Impulse is the change in momentum of an object. In martial arts, we can think of it as the force applied over a certain amount of time. A longer impact time will result in a larger impulse, even if the force is the same.
So if I can extend the time of contact, even just a little bit, I can increase the overall impact of the technique.
That's right. Think about following through with your punches and kicks rather than just hitting and retracting immediately. That follow-through increases the contact time, boosting the impulse and transferring more energy to your opponent.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense. I can see how all these biomechanical principles we've been discussing can really be applied to improve technique, maximize power, all that.
And that's just the beginning. The more you delve into biomechanics, the more you can fine-tune those techniques. Unlock your true potential in martial arts.
This has been an amazing deep dive. I feel like I have a whole new understanding of how my body works, how to use it more effectively in training. Any final words of wisdom before we wrap up?
Just remember, stay curious, keep experimenting. Pay attention to the biomechanics at play in your own movements. Don't be afraid to try new things. See what works best for you. The more you explore and refine your technique, the more powerful and efficient you'll become.
Great advice. So to all you martial artists out there, start paying attention to those biomechanical principles. You might be surprised at what you discover.
And until next time, keep training, keep exploring, and keep diving deep.
This has been The Deep Dive. See you on our next adventure.